The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to RAP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts,
Kim Purvis
and Alison Robinson. Make sure to check us out on our Facebook pages, RAP Paranormal and Friends and RAP Paranormal Busters, for up-to-date show information and events. Hello everyone and welcome to another night of RAP Paranormal and Friends. Have a special guest welcoming us back tonight. It's been a little bit. It's been since 2023, I believe, from when I was looking back at my reviews. So Rick Garner is back to the show from Unexplained Cases. He is the executive producer / paranormal enthusiast / investigator, digital creator, radio and TV personality. Is there anything he doesn't do? Welcome, Rick, back to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Wow, that's a long litany of things. I'm not used to having so many labels, but they're good labels, so I'll take them. So.
They are good labels. They are. You guys kind of do a little bit of everything on yours. It's not all paranormal. You have other things on there as well. But can you first kind of recap for some of our listeners, how did you get involved in the paranormal? What spiked your interest in that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to go back to childhood there, basically. And I think probably when the scholastic book clubs came to school and had their little creepy paperbacks there, basically. I distinctly remember one. I actually think I have it in storage. Should basically dig it out, but it's kind of like a banshee that's on like a coastline, and it was just something basic like ghost stories or whatever. And so I was the type of kid who basically always tried to like have enough money to get those books, basically go to the library, find the section, just had a fascination very early on. And that's kind of where things started. And, frankly, it made it very easy for when I had the chance to work with Darren Dito after radio, and I got into TV and met Darren at the CBS affiliate in Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay. Yes. And now, then how did Unexplained Cases, how did that come about?
Well, so at that time, so we're going back to 1999, and that's when Darren and I started basically doing these monthly broadcast news segments. And we were given the levity to, frankly, have segments up to 5 minutes, which is really unheard of for a local station. Normally your stories are about 60 90 seconds, basically.
Right.
5 minutes is like a whole block.
You're right, yeah.
But we were given that levity once a month to produce these stories. And it took about a month between researching and videoing and setting these up and producing them, basically, and turning them around and kind of became, I mean, I guess a little bit of a flattering is like even today, if I go down, there's still folks who remember us doing that. But, that's that's kind of nice, a little warm fuzzy. But, as with TV, we did that from, as long as Darren was at the station, which was at that time, he left. We worked together for probably almost a couple of years on that. And then I ended up working with a couple more reporters. As typical, even I moved on. And so then I got into working at AOL. But the whole entire time, it was like, wouldn't it be nice to get the band back together? Wouldn't it be nice to do this again? Kind of thing. Darren, he was still in TV, kind of doing, a version of this. I, at that time I wasn't. But so about 2019, actually 2018, he and I decided to relaunch the formula of Unexplained as Unexplained Cases on YouTube. And we had the pleasure of basically making episodes, live shows during the pandemic. We're now back to episodes, and it's definitely an interesting journey, to say the least.
Yes, I did see a couple little clips on your Instagram of you trying out the apps, and one of them was with GhostTube, which I don't know. We've tried it. We get a bunch of random crap that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I will be the first to tell you that, again, having done this since 1999, so basically about 25 years, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of everything. I mean, that basically comes from being a journalist. Radio, TV, online, you basically have to be skeptical. You have to be true. You're looking at facts. You're trying to present just the story. And that's also the formula for the episodes we put together is, basically preserving history and documenting the strange, paranormal, and unexplained. So when you have these apps, there are a few recently that's come out that I think I can appreciate when the developer basically says, I'm telling you what I'm using in these devices.
Right.
I'm breaking it down for you. That I can appreciate because then I'm like, okay, I see the science, I see the development. As far as I know, so there's a caveat right there. I have not seen that for GhostTube.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there's nothing illegitimate about them. But I think it's kind of like with everything is apps, to me, are entertainment value until proven otherwise.
Right.
But then if you really step back even a little bit further when it comes to these tools, again, it's depending on, how it's being used, the circumstances, relying on one tool, for example.
Right.
Not a really advisable approach.
Right. Yes.
So all of it has to be taken, a bit with a grain of salt, but it's kind of like, I get the question of like, hey, I'd like to get into investigating what tools we recommend. And I'm like, well, I think you have to really... Yes. Well, you got to start with yourself.
Right.
And there's two reasons for that. Yourself is a fantastic tool because, and this is where a lot of times I'll have a video to show like, hair standing up because it's kind of like, you're your own best tool. You're going to have perceptions of things going on around you, frankly, before you'll even realize it.
Right.
But also the second reason is what's your intent? Like, are you doing this because you're really curious that you want to help somebody, or are you doing this just because you want to be freaked out and get a good scare?
Right.
There's nothing inherently wrong with a scare, but then that also leads down a rabbit hole that we could go on, which is basically all of these episodes and this content creation of let's run around, scared about stuff, and it's like, guys, come on, just
Right.
enough. Stop with that.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. We do sometimes, we do use necrophonics from here and there. Kim doesn't really like to use the spirit box. I prefer to use that or just sit there with a recorder and go back and listen to my recorder. But at times I feel like, the apps, you have microphones on your phone. You're using it on your phone.
Yep.
And when you're repeatedly asking the same question, to me, it's going to keep a memory of that log in there, and it's going to spit that stuff out, essentially, and and then you kind of get things on repeat. It's kind of what I think at times. There could be some out there that are legit, and you might sometimes get legitimate answers. You could be having, if you had a couple things simultaneously, going off at the same time as this and that makes sense, then yes. But a lot of times I just feel like it just repeats itself over and over and over again.
Well, and that's where I think it's helpful. A lot of times people just pick up a device and they're like, oh, this is a ghost detector, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to detect ghosts. And it's like, well, okay, this is why it's really helpful to know what the device does. If you even start with like a K2 meter, a K2 meter is not a ghost detector.
No, it's
not.
It
is an EMF detector.
Exactly.
It is an actual legitimate tool that you can use to detect electromagnetic fields.
Exactly.
Now, why is that relevant? Well, because frankly, if you're sleeping next to a field that's constant, that can have adverse effects on your body. That could also allow you to hallucinate, or have headaches, or a lot of things, because everybody's body is different. But it's a tool. Now, again, it's kind of like if someone walks around with an EMF and it starts pegging, it's like, ooh, there's a ghost. Like, again, no, that's an EMF. That's a field. Now the question is it natural or unnatural?
Right.
Is it attached to a device?
Right.
Because if I set off my walkie-talkie,
boing, yep, it's going to go off. Your REM pods go off with
EMF.
walkie-talkies, all that. Yes.
Yeah, but again, that's where it's like, if you don't do the homework, if you don't understand it, then it's so easy to now you're having all of these false positives, frankly.
Yep.
And okay, maybe that's exciting, but it's fiction at that point.
Yes.
Or at least it's not what you think it is.
It is, exactly.
There is reality going on, but it's not paranormal.
Right, yes. Besides yourself, what is your piece of equipment, your favorite piece, your go-to?
Well, I think I'm fascinated by... Well, I kind of want to answer that two ways. My go-to is quite honestly this. An iPhone. And the reason for that would be that's what we primarily do our episodes with. That's our primary camera.
Oh, yeah.
We do have other cameras, but to me, what I found with that is you can have a digital recorder, which I'm a little bit of a traditionalist in the fact it is nice if you have a separate recorder, and it doesn't have to be digital either.
Right. Yep.
It could be tape. Sometimes we're kind of leaning towards going back to the old things basically. Going back to tape, going back to previous devices like that, instead of everything being digital,
right?
Which is convenient and quaint, but it's also old ways can be better. But the reason I like it, of course, I am a videographer. I am a video editor, so I enjoy composing stories there. It's also fascinating to me. There's been an indication of this. I haven't gone down the rabbit hole to really test it, but there's an indication that iPhones are good with picking up disembodied voices.
Oh, okay.
I can attest to that simply because while I was at Penhurst Asylum for the very first time, and this was back in 2019, I captured 3 different instances. Yeah. Now, this was while a paranormal convention was going on. This was
Uh-huh.
so that was first time I'd been to Penhurst, first time I'd gone to a convention. It was the first time that convention was being held there.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a lot going on.
Right.
And for me to have captured 3 legitimate instances that I'm like, okay, I know what I'm hearing. I didn't say that. Nobody else is around me to say that.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. So that's why I appreciate, that's that device, for both of those reasons.
So I have an iPhone. Now, are you doing it off of you're doing a video recording, or are you doing a voice recording off of it when you're getting...
So, generally speaking, for me, I'm using it for video. So, of course, one of the things, that I'd recommend, whether you're doing it for content or investigation, is you put it on airplane mode.
Yep, right. Yep.
And that should be number one, because you don't want to get distractions.
Right.
But also, if it's not in airplane mode, every time it's receiving something, and you can test it with a K2, it's giving off EMF.
Yep.
Which is also why you wouldn't want to be sleeping next to this thing, basically.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
The studies talking about charging your phone next to your bed, it's really best if it's a little ways away, because if your device is receiving stuff, you're basically sitting in a EMF all night long. Protecting your health and maybe your sanity there a little bit.
Yes, so I need to move my phone away a little bit more and get an actual alarm clock.
Right? I mean, listen, I'm as guilty, because that's what the phone, it becomes that, and I'm like, well, it's not terribly close, but I'm still thinking, how wide is the field,
Right,
so,
exactly. You just don't know. Now, besides...
I was just going to say, I also use, we often use a spirit box, which I actually prefer the portal version of that. Because, I think it's, and this gets into something too, because
I do like the portal ones.
Hey, it's Amy Brown from The Bobby Bones Show. Join me in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for a chance to win a trip to meet Megan Maroney at the 2025 iHeart Country Festival in Austin, Texas on May 3rd, hosted by Bobby Bones. We're going to hook you up with tickets, flights, hotel, food credits, and a meet and greet with Megan Maroney. Take action now to support St. Jude and help cure childhood cancer, and you're going to be entered for a chance to win. Visit iHeartCountryTrip.com to learn more.
Yeah, what we want to try to do, and this goes back to my original statement about wanting to understand equipment. A lot of this stuff relates to ITC, and the theories, because let's face it, all of this is theoretical,
right?
In the explanation of it. The reason I like a portal is because it's lowering that noise, and it kind of begs the question. Sometimes I've often wondered, even in that case, you're rotating through frequencies fast. Either it's forwards or it's backwards, it's slow or it's fast, and you're having words come through. And then but at the same time, I'm like, why wouldn't it be strange, or why wouldn't it be possible just to be on just a single bit of static, basically, and these are things that I think sometimes you just have to take the time to either research and or experiment yourself,
right?
and figure out, what works, what's best, because it has been interesting. In certain locations, I have asked the question, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to communicate with this, or do you prefer to communicate? Now that could be a K2, rods, whatever we have,
right.
REM pod or whatever. And very rarely is the spirit box chosen. And so it's kind of interesting, because then you're wondering, well, is that based on the energy required to communicate through that?
Right.
Is it the noise? Because sometimes I can't remember the exact case. I did remember actually asking, does that noise bother you? And there was an indication of yes.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, interesting.
Yeah.
So again, is that everybody, you know,
right.
There's the preference. So whomever that was, basically, they weren't really digging it, but someone else may not care.
Yeah, that's right. Now, with your with unexplained cases, I know you do, you know, other unusual stories and things like that. How do you come up with your topics? Like,
well, that's, you know, I often compare us basically more to unsolved mysteries,
right,
to make a direct comparison, or as I've told other team members multiple times, I'm like, we're unexplained cases, we're not ghost cases, because the majority of our cases are ghost related. Paranormal certainly covers, you know, more than just ghosts,
right.
but the challenge is, you know, or the reality is basically finding hauntings is so ridiculously easy. Now that comes with a little bit of an asterisk, because to me, there are places I've wanted to get into that have no interest in talking about it. Like maybe the previous owners, for example, you know, they were very open to it, very accommodating.
Right.
But now they have new owners and they're not.
Right.
Something you know, you has to be very sensitive about is, you know, for example, right now we just took on a very local, I would call it private case.
Right.
Normally that means a home.
Right.
In this case, it's a business. That, you know, it may never see the light of day as an episode.
Right.
Because, again, we're going into this to help the business owners understand what's going on, try to get them some answers, try to get some documentation and some evidence. And if they're okay with it, well, then great. That becomes an episode. And that's why I also say, you know, in that sense, we're not content creators and certainly not content creators first.
Right.
You know, we're documentarians, we're researchers. You know, I obviously love putting together the episodes, but at the same time, you know, I'm also working on a cold case right now, basically. That's local, and it's 12 years. It's unsolved. Wow. I found that those cases are terribly hard to get into. One might think, well, why wouldn't someone, you know, why is that difficult? I was like, well, I feel that there's multiple reasons. Like, for example, if I was still with the TV station, you know, I feel like that gives you automatic access.
Right.
It's sometimes local celebrity, or if I was at a network level, then it's like, oh yeah, there's some credibility.
Right.
But if you're basically someone who's a YouTuber, you know, I mean, at that point, it depends on who you're talking about. Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's like, but also you are dealing with something that it can be sensitive. Maybe it's hard for a family who may or may not want to talk about it. Maybe there's some sensitive elements of the case that it's like, we can't really discuss that right now.
Right.
Maybe you can get into a situation, especially if it's involving, you know, some type of unaliving, as the current word likes to be, that you could be putting yourself in danger,
right?
Like, kind of thing. You know, I mean, there's a lot of layers to that. Just like also UFO cases, difficult to find. And I think at the end of the day, it just can be a little challenging because people, you go through layers. Right. Let's face it, basically. You know, your first layer is you experience something and you're like, nah, that didn't happen. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, it kind of, nah, that didn't. You're back and forth in disbelief of like, so then let's say you get to a point where you fully accept it, like, I can't rationalize it, I can't explain it. Well, then next, you have to be willing to talk to someone about it. Some people never make it out of that first level. But then if they talk to somebody, that may be where it stops. It's very rare, I found, to get to the third and the fourth level, which third would be talking to a stranger. You know, second level, it's like friend or family. Third is stranger. Fourth is definitely the most difficult, because now you're sitting down and you're having someone document it. You're talking to a camera, you're being interviewed, a reporter is taking down notes or whatever.
Right.
Because you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to be ridiculed. People are going to laugh at me forevermore now. This is out there. This is what happened. And maybe people believe me. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll ridicule me. It's a real problem. It's a real challenge.
It is. There's a lot of, and even if you put something out there and you may not say that it's paranormal, but you're not sure what it is and you're just kind of looking for ideas, you still get those trolls out there that are negative and just rain on everybody's parade about everything.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's the reality too, is like, I've had multiple times, whether it's something I put on TikTok, or Instagram or wherever, you're going to have folks who always basically think that you're faking it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the reality is what has not helped it is you do have content creators
that
who do fake it.
Exactly. But they're very popular for doing it.
Well, and this is why I say, and you're why we can't have nice things.
Exactly.
Because, you've spoiled it for everyone. And once people realize it, well, now they think everyone does it. I definitely think this is why we haven't been able to get into certain locations, because unless someone, they know me,
right.
They know our reputation, or they know me or Darren or Mike or Jim, then it's like, no, you're basically another one of those goofballs, and you're going to come in here and whatever, and I don't want to have anything to do with that.
Yeah,
and it's very unfortunate. But to your point, it's like, again, I mean, like I like to tell people, would be like, hey, Jesus was doing miracles and people didn't believe even him, basically, like that. So, I mean, folks are always the same. You could have class A information, and have video of someone appearing, manifesting in front of you, and it's like, no, you faked that. I'm like, yeah, okay. I can't prove it to you. I can't, change your mind.
Right, yeah, exactly. And, I mean, it is what it is, but, yeah, you do have... I mean, yeah, it is a shame that, I mean, yes, some of them are out there and, go ahead, create content and things like that. But maybe put a disclaimer with it saying that it's, what you're doing is not real. Because then you have people coming out, they're going to these locations, and then they get pissed off because they're like, well, so-and-so, got scratched by a demon here and I didn't get anything. I listened to a cricket chirp all night, And it's like, well, because the way they do it and those things is not always like how it is when you're actually in a location. You could be sitting in the dark, talking to yourself for hours on end and not get anything. That's just the way it is. Yeah. You're not going to get stuff every time.
That's the other part of expectations, is like when folks go in, especially when they've consumed the content, and they're like, oh, look at all the stuff that they got in an hour. And it's like, well, I mean, from a network perspective, it's like folks don't seem to grasp they're there an entire week sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so what they got may seem like a lot, but it took them 5 to 7 days just to be able to get that.
Right.
And, and again, it's kind of this almost entitlement of thinking like, I'm going to walk into some location or whatever. And it's like, okay, performing monkeys, basically.
Right.
Do something for me. And it's like, okay, would you walk into someone's house and expect, them to basically serve you and, have pizza ready for you or whatever and feed you and stuff like that? I mean, now granted, if they're friends or family and you have that relationship, sure, but we're talking about a perfect stranger here.
Right, yeah.
Most folks would be, get out of my house.
Right. Exactly. I don't know.
It's just it's funny basically. Some of it is just realizing like you kind of have to laugh about it because also, there's not going to be some changing of the minds, and I mean that's why, I look at it as basically we just consistently do our thing, and it's like that's also why it's like. we're more for quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Which is why, used to be, I kind of had the mindset, when we started the YouTube journey of like, okay, I got to get something out at least monthly. We're not going to do it any more frequently than that, but let's keep churning some stuff. And in the beginning, we'd done that because we also had put some things in the proverbial can. But then as, COVID happened and health things happened and life happened, basically, it was like, you know what? No, because again, I'm not coming at it. We're not coming at it as content creators. We're coming at it to basically help folks, and also as a pretty cool hobby. And so that's where it's like, all right, so when we churn out something, it's nice to have a base of folks who are like, yeah, we're still hanging around. We're not going to be, snotty little folks who are like, why didn't I have my episode? I've been waiting for it.
Yeah.
And like, well, then you're not probably, go find something else. We're not going to be able to help you. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So when Kim and I first started out, this was in 2013. So, we were like, oh yeah, we got to put this stuff on. And so, oh my gosh, if you go to our YouTube page, I mean, there's nothing posted on there since then because it's if you want a good laugh, you should go look at it. Like literally, it's the funniest crap ever. Nothing's edited. Like I just literally plugged in. I had one of the old camcorders with the cassette tape. I just plugged it into my computer and I downloaded them and then I just put them right up on there. Like.
Nice.
It's the funniest thing ever. So if you need
it's raw.
It is raw, very raw. But yeah, so if you need a good laugh, it's still up there. But I tell everybody that. I'm like, I don't care. It's fun. That's
well, exactly. And I mean, to me, that's also where like, this also is where I come from a different line of thinking is like, I've had people talk about like, oh, you've got such polished stuff and good like that. And I'm like, well, first off, I appreciate that. I mean, I'm humble with compliments, but that comes from my background.
Right.
And not everyone has worked, over 30 years in broadcast production, basically.
Yeah, right.
So, so there's some skills there. But at the same time, that's where I'm also happy to be able to help folks because, what's your intent? What are you trying to do? And folks who are trying to be competitive and they're trying to, one up and whatever like that. Well, they're probably like, ooh, I've got to keep this to myself. And ooh, I can't give you my trade secrets. At the end of the day, I'm like, listen, you see something that we did that you like, ask me how I did it. I'll be happy to tell you, basically.
Yeah.
And if you do it better than I did, that's fine. Because I know that there are editors and storytellers that are a heck of a lot better than me, and that's fine. But that's where, again, this one of those, it comes with age, and it comes with maturity, and it comes with perspective.
Yes.
When you get to these places.
Yeah, I am not tech savvy at all. Kim's like, well, we should really try to get some of our videos up there of things that have happened to us. And I'm like, girl, they're on your Facebook Live. I don't know how to do that. Like, we'll figure it out over a bottle of wine at some point. But like,
see, there's a first prerequisite to that. Wine before ghosts.
That's right.
So wine.
Well, I have a shirt. What does it say? My shirt says something about.
Hey, it's Amy Brown from The Bobby Bone Show. Join me in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for a chance to win a trip to meet Megan Maroney at the 2025 iHeart Country Festival in Austin, Texas on May 3rd, hosted by Bobby Bones. We're going to hook you up with tickets, flights, hotel, food credits, and a meet and greet with Megan Maroney. Take action now to support St. Jude and help cure childhood cancer, and you're going to be entered for a chance to win. Visit iHeartCountryTrip.com to learn more.
Oh, I can't remember. Something in moderation, but not ghosts and wine or something. Everything's in moderation,
yes.
But not ghosts and wine or something like that. Yeah.
That's a good shirt. That's nice. It's good.
I know, I like to have fun with that stuff. But no, seriously, like some of it, because, we didn't know what we were doing, but she's like, yeah, we should, we need to get our things out there. And I'm like going through these videos and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is that? Like, what are we even looking at? That's probably a critter. Like, what is that? But I don't want to take it down because it's comical. And you know what? It just shows the growth, of where we started off with. And then eventually if we start putting stuff up there, then, you can see the changes and whatnot and whatever, because at that time we were just so excited and, we're figuring out these things. And then, I'm looking at them like, oh, I think that's a mouse, or, oh,
Well, yeah. And I think that's educational.
It is.
And also
it is, for sure.
it's very helpful in remembering things. I mean, that's why it's like I would encourage anyone, to document things. And by that, I mean, just like folks who, if you're having activity, in your home or business or whatever, I mean, keep a journal of stuff, because as much as you might want to say, oh, I'll remember this or whatever, it's like, well, no, you won't. Just forget it. Because I mean, even if you have a mind like a steel trap, bless you, there's a good chance that the cobwebs will form at some point, and then you would be like, oh man, I wish I would have wrote that down. Like, or wow, I could have had a V8. Not everybody knows what that is. You're one of us. Yay. But it's just kind of funny like that. But then that's where, like, I think about people rag on orbs so much. And I remember, back in the Unexplained days, when we were working on stuff, there were a lot of things that we definitely, were tracked and talked about that were orbs. I look at it now and I could be like, yeah, that was probably dust. Right. That was probably moisture. But at the same time, to me, it's kind of like I tell people today, it's like, if it looks like a bubble, the kinds that you basically dip in the bottle and blow, and it's kind of like it's got colors, and it's very three-dimensional, it's like, you should probably time out for a second, because usually at that point it's got some weird color. It's it's yellow, it's blue, it's red. It looks three-dimensional. It may even kind of be a light anomaly. I wouldn't dismiss that. If it's flat, and if it just kind of looks like it's floating. Especially if you can see, and again, this is where it comes into looking at stuff. If you see other evidence, if you basically, blow a book, and you see, okay, that's dust. That, I can rule that out. Right. But it's the stuff that you can't rule out that you have to be like, that's a little strange. Where'd that come from?
Right. Now, I've actually, this was our very first investigation at Villisca. And this was actually... it was just starting to be evening. It was still kind of light outside. And my cousin was sitting on the bed down where the two friends were staying. And she was sitting there asking questions. And I was standing by the closet. And I was like, looking at her. And I'm like, what is that? And I'm like, there's like this yellow light that I actually saw with my eyes. So I'm like, okay. And it was by her. So I got my phone out and I started taking pictures. And all of a sudden, she was completely out of the picture. It was just a bright yellow orange light in front of her. And I felt this rush on me. And I got so emotional. And I just started sobbing.
Wow.
Yeah. That's something I can't explain. Because I actually saw this light with my own eyes. And then I put my phone up and I took several pictures. And she was completely out of the picture at that point.
And see, that is a perfect example of, when I say it's always important to have that type of validation. And by that, I mean multiple sources. Right. So it's kind of like, if you had gotten just emotional, and especially if there was no one else with you. Yeah. So that's another reason why it's nice to always have, to always have someone else with you, basically, in a situation to validate, safety, a lot of reasons, basically. Yeah. But you had that reaction, but then also you have these pictures at the same time. And it's like, again, if you have multiple points that are intersecting, it's like, all right, that's a little bit stronger pieces of evidence right there that something weird was going on.
Mm-hmm. There is, and we have the recording too of me talking, and you can hear me talking about it, and you hear me getting hysterical and then dropping the F-bomb a million bazillion times because I didn't know what just happened. Because that was our very first investigation, when we're going into this just kind of, trying to, see if we get anything, see if we could figure out anything. And
hey, it's Amy Brown from The Bobby Bone Show. Join me in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for a chance to win a trip to meet Megan Maroney at the 2025 iHeart Country Festival in Austin, Texas on May 3rd, hosted by Bobby Bones. We're going to hook you up with tickets, flights, hotel, food credits, and a meet and greet with Megan Maroney. Take action now to support St. Jude and help cure childhood cancer, and you're going to be entered for a chance to win. Visit iHeartCountryTrip.com to learn more.
We had that. That was insane.
That's, for first time right there. That's, it definitely wasn't our first one, but it's kind of like equally, it was around our first group of things that we were basically checking out was going to Myrtle's plantation, because I often get asked the question of have you seen? I have, the closest way I can answer that is I have taken a picture of what I consider a full body, who I nicknamed Creek Boy. That's one thing. But as far as visually seeing, we basically at Myrtle's, we heard, the wind was kind of blowing a little bit, but there's a difference between, a little light breeze going through some bushes and what might kind of sound like an animal, for example. You can kind of distinguish. It's like, well, that sounds like something. And to look over and kind of see some motion coming out of some bushes, to grab a flashlight and to point it, and for a split second for the brain to process what's being seen, it's like, okay, it's a cat. Yeah. That's nice. I'm more of a cat guy than a dog guy, so I appreciate seeing a cat. But then, of course, when you put light on an animal, generally speaking, at night, you're going to always get some kind of a reflection of the eyes. But there was nothing but dark circles that were right there. And so in that second of seeing it, followed immediately by a crap, we're not recording this, there's nothing that's documenting this, to basically a moment from Ghostbusters when Ray's whole idea was get her. We basically were like, it's the cat, and basically go rushing towards, which he kind of saunters and goes kind of like just disappearing into the bushes. And so we run up to the edge. By this point, I have grabbed a digital camera, and I'm snapping some pictures over what's the parking lot. And in that particular case, again, you could say, is it dust? Was it something else? All I know is in the first few pictures, there's nothing. Then all of a sudden, there's all these orbs. And then there's nothing. So again, did I stir up something, or was it actually the cat dispersing? Still don't know. Still was strange. Definitely know that there was an entity that was not reflecting any light. And the fact that people have seen Mert the cat on the property added to, the fact that there has been a ghost cat that has been seen. So it's definitely strange.
Yeah. What is the strangest thing that you think you have encountered?
Well, I can immediately just go ahead and, let's just take off the table, basically. Everything is not a demon. I've never been scratched. Basically, as a man of faith, I would pretty much know if I was coming on something like that, and I would be able to identify it and know, frankly, whether or not we needed to be there, because I think there's also, again, with that maturity thing, is there are sometimes places you need to be and places you don't need to be.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And you need to respect that and make that choice before something bad happens to you. The most unusual experience, again, I wish it had been, if I'd had the proper equipment to have recorded it. I know what I heard was when Darren and I and a photographer were in Mayor Hope Mansion in Meridian, Mississippi. And, three things of that case that was fascinating would be, we had passed out, basically. We're all kind of like, we could stay there the whole night.
Yeah.
And it didn't cost us anything
Nice.
because, again, there's perks of being associated with a TV station.
Right.
This is also in Mississippi. There is a such thing as Southern hospitality.
Nice.
And because basically the little ladies had given us the key and said, "Here you are. We don't stay here past 5 o'clock." We have no interest in staying, but, bless your heart. Y'all have fun. And so here we are in this big old antebellum mansion. And, I just remembered waking up and was just like,
Hey, it's Amy Brown from The Bobby Bone Show. Join me in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for a chance to win a trip to meet Megan Maroney at the 2025 iHeart Country Festival in Austin, Texas on May 3rd, hosted by Bobby Bones. We're going to hook you up with tickets, flights, hotel, food credits, and a meet and greet with Megan Maroney. Take action now to support St. Jude and help cure childhood cancer, and you're going to be entered for a chance to win. Visit iHeartCountryTrip.com to learn more.
What was that kind of thing? Watching the video, it sounds like someone is beating on the walls, and woke up Rob first to say, like, "What is that?" Darren to be like, "That's what woke me up." I never said anything because I was trying to figure out what was going on. We left a bunch of equipment running, and by that, you're talking about 2001 here. So we have field cameras that we can't review at the time. We do have recorders we could review, but it's tape, so you're only going to get so much in progress. It's better to take it back and listen to it. So it wasn't until after I reviewed that when we left the mansion, there were doors slamming.
Oh, wow.
There were bumps. There were like thumps next to the microphone. And I'm like, so y'all decided to show out while we were down to get some snacks, basically at the gas station. I see how you were. Because literally all this happened while we were gone. However, when we got back, and I was recording Darren, and so the video I have is of his reaction. The camera microphone was not sensitive enough to pick up what he and I were hearing.
Right.
So thinking about an antebellum house, ceilings were frankly a lot taller than they are in modern homes. And we were on the top floor, and knowing that there's nobody on the roof, we knew where Rob was. Again, I was documenting Darren walking through. We knew Rob was downstairs. But we're both hearing this, and it's like someone in heavy boots walking on gravel, because I'm sure there was gravel, or something to that nature on the top of this, flat roof. And literally what we're thinking is like, okay, hold on. Are we going insane? Because clearly we know what we're hearing, and it sounds like somebody walking. It's not going to be an animal. I mean, no animal sound like bipedal, short of it being Bigfoot. Right. Which, I mean, that could have been another story at that point, basically. Haunting, no, it's actually cryptid. And so we go outside to even try to look there and figure out, it's like, could someone have been, messing with us? Not that anyone knew that we were there that night. Could anyone get to the roof? No. But it's like, I 1,000% know what I was hearing and what he was hearing. And, that's where it's pretty crazy, basically, because I still find it fascinating whether it's touch or whether it's sound, it's basically, it's breaking into the physical that this evidence can do. That is just kind of fascinating, to say the least.
Oh, it is, for sure. So we stayed at the Garnet House Hotel last summer. And I still have I think I still have maybe 4 hours left to listen on there. But just in the few hours that I did listen, we could hear it downstairs. Well, I couldn't sleep. I slept 40 minutes in that house. I slept 40 minutes. I mean, it was insane, the amount of banging and noises and everything that were going on upstairs. And I caught it on my recorder. You can hear somebody walking on the wooden floors upstairs. There's a man talking into the recorder. Went upstairs. There was a neon ball that wasn't there before. And I asked the owner, because I'm like putting stuff away, and I'm like, okay, that ball wasn't there. It's not in any of our videos. And he's like, oh yeah, that ball was up in the attic, which you're not allowed to go in the attic. So it came down the stairs. So that could have been one of the noises I heard.
Right.
There was a doll thrown on the floor in another room. I mean, yeah, I don't know. We're going back. We're going back there in about 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens.
Wow. Wow. But again, that's fascinating. Just the amount of activity. But again, that's where people, it's funny how folks, I mean, a personal reflection on this was when Mike and I went to this old jail that we were basically collabing with another group. And I remember he and I, frankly, almost being like two spoiled little boys, basically being like, man, they're getting all the stuff. They're hearing all the things.
Yeah.
I mean, that literally was almost our attitude of like Tammy and Ronnie were getting all the evidence, and we weren't capturing anything.
Yeah.
But then yet, it's an episode that I'm working on right now. Now, keep in mind, we did this a couple of years ago.
Right.
So, again, I focused on other things, decided to come back to this. And the amount of EVPs and different types of things that we caught, I'm like, again, there's perspective, and it's two sides of a coin, because you can think you're not getting anything, and you're getting plenty of it. You just aren't immediately aware of it. Or the other side of the coin is, literally it could be a dead night, pun intended, that nothing is going on whatsoever, but it's just an off evening, and it sometimes happens. Or it may play into you if you're coming there and you're maybe you're tired, maybe you're ticked off, maybe you got stuff going on, you're not in the right space.
That it can play havoc on that. I know.
You're right? You're basically a repellent, or in some cases, you could be attracting other things.
Yes,
it just depends.
They tell me I'm a beacon for things. So
nice. Well, speaking of beacons, since you're recording all this, what I want you to be able to do is, scrub through everything, and I want to know if that doll in that corner, if that head's turned while we've been talking. But you'll have to scrub through the video to figure that out.
Great. No, but okay. So
I have no proof that that's happening. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Mild curious. So, yeah.
Who knows? I know the one in the corner has been in a different area, and the kids don't come down here because they're scared of my dolls. So I don't know why she was down, but I mean, I don't think they're haunted or anything. They're family dolls. I used to play with that tall 3-footer in the back.
That's good.
But going back to the Garnet House, I wanted to tell you something else about that real quick. That was kind of interesting. So we went into this place with no history. I mean, I knew a little bit about it. I had Rob on years ago, the old owner, years ago when we first started out. So I knew a little bit, but not a lot. And so I just had been wanting to go there. So we went. The new owner couldn't meet us there. So, we were kind of just going in blind. Okay? So downstairs in one of the rooms, they actually have actual human remains. Okay? in a casket.
Okay.
It has no head.
Okay.
And so Leslie and I were down there just kind of doing an EVP session. And Kim tried to scare us or whatever, like she does, because she's ornery like that. And then she's kind of standing there, and we hear this big thud. And we're like, what was that? And I go, Kim, was that you? She's like, no, I'm standing right here. She's like, it came from over there. And I said, no, it came from the room next to us. She's like, are you sure about that? And I'm like, I'm 100% sure. We go around the corner to it looks like a study. There's a whole bunch of books on the shelf. This one particular book had fallen off, and it's about law, something about attorneys, whatever. So some of the things that we were getting through the night, we had written them down, because we usually write things down. And Leslie decided, okay, she's like, I'm going to try and find some history on this place. So she goes on there. The owner of it was actually in law. And that book was about attorneys. Mm-hmm. Kind of coincidental.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, those are the things. It's like, you know,
of course, we didn't have a freaking camera in that room, but you can hear us talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and there's the other reality too. It's like the amount of things that happen, you know, when a camera's not rolling.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like that's when I think, yeah, okay, they're aware. Some may be like, you know, yeah, okay, I'll give you something or whatever like that. But then also I think plenty are like, no, you know, either the device can be affected so that it's, you know, it stops recording. It's, right. You know, it's messed up, you know, or yeah, I mean, it's in those moments where, yeah, you're not rolling and something happens and you're like, okay.
100%. It happens to us every time.
Right? You're just like, come on.
I know. Come on. I just want to get just one thing on there, but I found that interesting because, you know, the guy was like a lawyer and that's what the book was on. So I was like, that's kind of interesting. That's not a fact that we knew before going in. You know, we went in blindly trying to figure out names and, you know, things of that nature. And then we went through the history. We're like, okay, all right. Interesting. So I just got to get to the last 5 hours of my recorder at some point.
See, and that's where the struggle is real. I mean, that's where when going through stuff. I mean, there are times like for me, it's like I would necessarily advocate this, but if someone's kind of like, "Hey, how do you get through it?" and I'm like, "Well, you know, I have noise canceling headphones, and then I will put this video into, you know, I edit things on Final Cut." You know, there are folks who are like, oh, you know, I only use Premiere. You know, I only use Final Cut. I use both. I prefer Final Cut. Yeah. Again, everybody's different. Right. You know, to each their own and what type of video editing tool you want to use. Right. But I will put that in there. And because I'm also used to like waveforms and stuff like that, I will scrub and I will look for something that's, you know, that there's an indicator. Because, I mean, let's face it. If there's not an indicator of something, then if there was something there, that would be next to impossible to clear up. But if there's something there, you're going to see it and then be able to figure it out. Because otherwise, yeah, you know, if I had to sit there and just listen to something, you know, for hours and hours,
that's what I do.
Then it would just be like, so yes, God bless you, because I mean but that is where folks don't realize it's like, yeah, when you're having to go through something, you know, and make sure that there's something there or not, it is a long process, and there's not always any shortcuts to that.
Nope. Kim and I used to set up 8 surveillance cameras. She actually has 16 because she has a new set, but we we only set up 8, and then, you know, we stay in these locations, and so that's rolling for 12 hours almost on each camera. Oh
yeah,
my
do the
gosh!
math on that one.
We've kind of given up on that. Occasionally, we will bring out a couple of those. Otherwise, it's Facebook Live or my handheld camcorder. Like, that's it. Yeah. Like, because I am tired of reeling up all that wire and crap after you've slept maybe an hour, you know. got to drive 3 or 4 hours home. And then you got to sit through all those hours of watching who knows what, a blank screen.
Yes. I was about to say blank screen, I mean, and that's another thing too. Yeah. Especially if I have a static cam. I mean, that's like this jail, for example, I mean, I've tried to listen to the clip and I've watched it and scrubbed it, but it's kind of like there was a, static cam. And the only thing that's relevant about it would be like there's probably a good 30 minutes to where there's like an eddy, and we had like some trigger objects of like a little shot glass of whiskey and a cigar, and all that is in IR mode and it's out of focus. But then all of a sudden, there's kind of like there's a little bit of a noise, a tap almost, something that you again might dismiss or not register, but you kind of hear that. And it's not a person. I 100% know it's nobody comes into the room. But then just a matter of seconds later, all of a sudden the eddy and the shot glass and the cigar come into focus. So it's like for 30 minutes you've been out of focus, but now all of a sudden you're in focus. So it's like, what changed that? Now, eventually that goes out of focus just before someone comes into the room. So you're like, okay, again, you mark it as weird and unexplained because it's not normal behavior for a camera to do something like that unless something caused its depth of field to need to change.
Right. That is true, because we have had that happen too, and it was like we could not explain it. And it's just sometimes it's so bizarre, and you're like, what is that? I took a video at Villisca last summer. It was either last summer or the summer before. We were up in the attic, and there's a doll up there that he put dirt, sand from all these serial killer places, whatever, put it in this doll, thought that would be great, and put it in the Villisca Axe Murder House. Why not? So they had it up.
Sure, sounds like a great idea.
They put it up in the attic, and there's 3 of us up there, and I'm filming on my phone, talking to the doll, and like people have asked things or apologized for doing stuff without asking it because they've had things happen, supposedly, whatever. And this other gal's standing behind me, so she can see in my camera everything is normal. I go back to replay it because I go back to replay it, and the time is flipped, and the video is now upside down.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know how that happens. I guess I've never had that happen before taking a video. I mean, my phone is upright the right way. Everybody can see that I'm filming it, and it's perfectly fine, but then...
Hey, it's Amy Brown from The Bobby Bone Show. Join me in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for a chance to win a trip to meet Megan Maroney at the 2025 iHeart Country Festival in Austin, Texas on May 3rd, hosted by Bobby Bones. We're going to hook you up with tickets, flights, hotel, food credits, and a meet and greet with Megan Maroney. Take action now to support St. Jude and help cure childhood cancer, and you're going to be entered for a chance to win. Visit iHeartCountryTrip.com to learn more.
You go back to look at it and it's upside down, everything's flipped? I don't...
Yeah. Now, the closest thing that I would say, with an iPhone, because this has happened to me, you can actually notice it when you start recording, is like, I'm doing things mostly in landscape, basically. So you can be 16 by 9, when I'm recording.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm shooting, YouTube, basically. Right. So I'm generally doing that. And you will see the counter will be at the top.
Right.
So a visual confirmation for me is, okay, that's shooting correctly. Now, sometimes I'll start it, and the counter will be on the left, which actually means, the rotation didn't quite get it. Right. So it's actually, in that sense, if you watch it back, it's going to really be more in portrait, and I'll have to do a flip. But upside down, never had that happen.
I don't know.
And if I heard you correctly, and it's flipped.
Like the numbers?
Was it just upside down or completely reverse flipped?
Yeah, it was upside down, like upside down. But like when I go to look at it, like if I wanted to edit it, the number at the bottom was flipped. But when I recorded, the numbers were fine. So I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, yet again, it's one of those to where you can't dismiss it, because if it's not normal behavior, it's kind of like, I like the idea going back to Creek Boy, basically, at the time of taking this picture. So this was on a Nikon digital camera. And Kodak, of course, that used to be, you say that name, that's like the creme de la creme of dealing with film. I reached out to both of them at the time and even shared the picture to basically be like, hey, can you explain what this is? And it's funny that both of them wanted to say that was an electronic artifact. And I said, thank you for confirming that basically this is, in essence, paranormal without saying it. Yeah. Because an electronic artifact, that's what evidence basically is, if you want to get right down to it. Someone could say, oh, well, that's a mistake. And it's like, no, I mean, something that shows up that's not supposed to be there, that there's no real explanation for it, especially if you're doing something digital. Now, if you're doing something more analog or that involves, film or whatever, same difference. It's like in the development process, if there's no explanation for that. I mean, granted, with film, sometimes you could be like, oh, that's an overexposure, that's a double exposure, stuff like that. Right. But there's some things that end up happening even in those scenarios that it's like, no, there's just no way that could actually be that was actually something that was captured, yet again, that's unexplained.
Yep. That's why, nobody knows. Nobody is a professional in this, and, we're all here trying to figure out what this phenomena is, what's actually happening. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's why, to me, I look at it to where when you can have folks that their intent, their like-mindedness is the same, I mean, I've encountered folks that my discernment is like, okay, all they want to do is basically they're seeking fame and fortune, then I'm like, okay, then you do you, there's not going to be any judgment passed upon you, but that's not something I'm going to associate with. Yeah. We're looking for folks, just like you said. It's like you're trying to research and understand at the same time. You're trying to hopefully help somebody out, because that's why folks reach out. They look for some type of answers or help to something they're experiencing.
Yep, exactly. Now, before we wrap things up, because I've kept you a while here.
Oh, but see, we could go another couple hours. I mean, it's fine. So
probably we're heading into. I'm usually asleep by 8:30.
See, I'm keeping you up, girl. Come on.
I know you are. Because I'm like in bed by 8:30, but it's like a tossing and turning, and then I'm up by 4:30 in the morning. So it's like. That's how I roll. It's except for unless it's an investigation night, then I will stay up later. Because the adrenaline is flowing. Like I'm just like, okay, I've got to stay up.
I was gonna say adrenaline or coffee or both. So I mean,
a lot of caffeine is needed for that for sure. Because I'm like, because I'm like, it's a struggle to stay up late for me anymore.
The struggle is real.
Yeah, for sure. Now, where can I know you have YouTube and you're on Instagram. Do you have Facebook? Because I'm on Facebook, so I don't know all your social media, but.
Yep. Yeah. Basically, I always tell folks if they want to look at, the primary channel is YouTube. And so it's, youtube.com/unexplained cases. You could search for it, which sometimes calls up other stuff, but we're usually pretty close to the top in that. We do have unexplainedcases.com. That site has all our latest stuff and also goes back to the unexplained days. And so, but I also tell folks, keep in mind that these were videos from the early 2000s. So the quality not going to be the greatest because that's the quality from then.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to convert everything till now,
Right,
which wouldn't have been recorded in HD or anything like that at the
right.
time anyway.
Yeah.
SD at the best. But also Facebook, TikTok, Instagram is Unexplained Cases.
Mm-hmm.
Not terribly active on the old X, but we are there. Except, unfortunately, the character limit makes us Unexplained Case.
Oh.
I do not have an S. I did not have enough room for that, so I'm a singular Unexplained Case. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, I know. That drives me nuts that there's a character amount and all that crap on that. Good grief. Mm-hmm. Don't get me started on that.
It could be a little bit longer. It's like in that case, here's just one more. Come on,
just one more.
We'll
just
be fine.
More. It's fine. It's fine. What's one more gonna hurt, right? Well, thank you,
exactly.
Rick. Well, thank you, Rick, for joining, and
thank you.
Yeah, thanks to our listeners out there. Until next time, peace out, everybody.
Hey, it's Amy Brown from The Bobby Bone Show. Join me in supporting St. Jude Children's Research Hospital for a chance to win a trip to meet Megan Maroney at the 2025 iHeart Country Festival in Austin, Texas on May 3rd, hosted by Bobby Bones. We're going to hook you up with tickets, flights, hotel, food credits, and a meet and greet with Megan Maroney. Take action now to support St. Jude and help cure childhood cancer, and you're going to be entered for a chance to win. Visit iHeartCountryTrip.com to learn more.